Totus interruptus. The Supreme Court closed out its term with two highly anticipated decisions today. One is a big win for the GOP, the other a potential blow to President Trump. First, the justices ruling that federal courts should not have a role in resolving partisan gerrymandering claims, meaning no stopping state legislators from drawing electoral maps to their advantage. Republicans, who hold control in most state houses, they love the call. In the second case, the court shot down the Trump administration's reasoning for adding a citizenship question to the 2020 census, prompting the president to threaten to delay the constitutionally mandated head count. Both decisions affect how voters will be represented in the 2020 election. So, how will these rulings impact which party holds the levers of power? Joining me now, attorney and co-author of The Federalist Society, How Conservatives Took the Law Back from Liberals, Danielle Mclaughlin is here. Hi.
Hi.
So let's talk about gerrymandering a little bit, because there was a lot more emotion from this decision than I originally thought. Now, having spent my adult life in California, the whole state is gerrymandered to benefit Democrats.
Right. And that the case actually involved two different cases, one in Maryland and one in North Carolina. And basically we had Democrats in Maryland who gerrymandered to create their own advantage, and then North Carolina you had Republicans. So you kind of had a little bit one for the other. The real emotion, I think, came from Justice Kagan in dissent. She really saw this as the court abdicating its responsibility to make sure that our democracy isn't being torn apart. And her point was this gerrymandering, now we have actually GOP in legislators, or taking over, holding the power in legislatures and governments in 22 states. The problem being, John Roberts says, well, the way to get to this, the court, this is a political question, the court can't get involved, is through legislatures. But of course, if you're gerrymandered out of power,
which happened to every Republican congressperson in California.
Right, absolutely. And, you know, in some respects, it's better that the court doesn't wade into this, because in Roberts' view, he said, well, how much is too gerrymandered? How extreme should the court be? He said there isn't a test for this. He said we don't have any power under the Constitution.
The Supreme Court doesn't have to lord over every single issue and every crisis, and they sort of punted it back to the states.
Yes.
But can the state Supreme Courts now decide, and did their judgments, is that now the official precedent for each state?
That's exactly right. And so what Roberts did, he actually reeled off a lot of ways.
And that was 5-4, so he cited it, and I'm wondering if he is the new suitor.
Or one thing that was interesting is that Kennedy's absence was not felt in either of these decisions, because Roberts joined the Liberals in this.
He loves the power, doesn't he?
Well, I think he's an institutionalist, and I think
he's turned into Kennedy, though. He is the swing voter. Well, the balance of the court remains as it is.
Right. And we see this with presidents who think that they're getting a conservative, and then they end up not being. It's going to be interesting because he's a young Chief Justice. He's going to be on the court for a really long time. I think this was him very much saying we're going to stay out of a political fray.
Yes.
It's very important to him.
And let's talk a little bit about the census question, because Clarence Thomas was very upset about this, and he wrote in his dissent, now that the court has opened up this avenue of attack, opponents of executive actions have strong incentives to craft narratives that would derail them. And, you know, basically what he's saying is the court questioned the intent of putting that question on the census.
Right.
And you could question the intent of any federal agency. Yeah. And that gives a lot of ammunition to people who don't like the EPA.
Sure. And so this is a sort of slightly obscure statute called the Administrative Procedures Act. You're right. Generally, agency actions, the actions of, you know, the executive are afforded a huge amount of discretion.
Is that included in Chevron deference?
That's exactly what Chevron deference is. You're exactly right. So unless you are arbitrary and capricious, or you're doing something that is clearly unlawful, the agencies can do pretty much whatever they want. And there was an unusual amount of evidence actually introduced in the lower court showing that actually Wilbur Ross, although he wanted to come in, this question was something that was really on the Trump administration's mind right from the get-go. They put forth the rationale as being tied up with the Voting Rights Act and the concern about diluting the votes of minorities.
And the voices, because...
Exactly.
And they showed that this was really put on there to silence people, because if they see a question like that, they're not going to fill out the rest of the census.
Right.
Therefore, they're going to be underrepresented.
Right, and that's the Democrats' point. They say, okay, so the census means apportionment of federal funds. It means congressional seats. And when you have mixed households, as many immigrant households are, if you have 5 legal immigrants, 1 illegal immigrant, you're not going to count those people, because people are the folks who don't have.
Don't want to put the fact that
exactly.
Interesting. All right. Well, we'll see where this one goes as well. Danielle Mclaughlin, thank you so much for the insight.
Thank you, my dear.
I love it. People who can actually interpret Supreme Court decisions. Very, very smart people.